Hello, everyone, and welcome to this panel on AI and digitalisation in the frontier for clean energy. My name is Derrick. I'm the editor of Energy Digital and Climate Tech Digital, and I want to first and foremost thank Ed Crooks and his esteemed panel for their last session. It was truly insightful, the little bit that we caught at the end there. Before we begin, I'd like to introduce and hopefully allow you to welcome our panel, Saravan, James, and Anant. Can you please give them a round of applause? So as I'm sure I don't need to tell you, AI is something that's been thrust into the public domain in recent years. I, for one, cannot go more than a day without saying the letters A and I consecutively, and I don't want to say that on behalf of my panel, but I'm sure they will agree with me. But it's something that has been in the energy and technology sectors, respectively, been something that's been working away quite a bit over recent years. And I'm hoping that I can start by asking my panel a little bit more about where we are, in this journey of the where energy and AI and digitalisation mesh together. Saravan, if I could start with you, please. Do you want to give us a bit of insight from your perspective at AIQ, please?
I think the topic is red hot. I hope you guys can hear me to start with. AI is everywhere as we speak, but particularly in energy industry, AI is fast forwarding in terms of scaling up as we speak. We have far gone the stage of innovation. We are right now at the stage of scaling, and very soon you will see the stage of agentic AI. Maya, on that point specifically, there are three specific trends for AI in energy to start with. One is obviously it started as an augmented intelligence, like can you assist human in terms of giving better insights? But then slowly it moved into autonomous operations. So where you can actually see the operations are actually tackled by AI at the site without any human intervention, specifically from the safety's point of view to start with. And then what we are seeing right now is even accelerating and taking it forward. It's agentic AI. So we have gone forward the stage of robotic process automation, where automation was at a menial level. Right now, you can have agents at every point of the energy value chain, right from subsurface interpretation and all the way to the transportation piece. And this trend is becoming a reality. And we at AIQ, we have already done this and doing this as we speak in our group of companies. And really excited to talk about it as we go ahead.
Fantastic, thank you. James, are those sentiments that you share over at Capgemini, or do you want to come from a different perspective, perhaps?
Thank you for inviting me first. Yes, I do share those sentiments. I think we're on the cusp of a revolution. I think it could be as important as the invention of electricity in the first place, actually. It's that degree of intensity at the moment. I mean, and it's being used today, just to give some examples, it's used extensively in forecasting, it's used extensively in trading, it's used extensively in optimizing the grid on the utility side. It's also used in optimizing batteries. So there's an extensive use of AI even today. We're past the proof of value stage. Just a small example in technology, just to bring it to life. About 4 months ago, I went to a conference where the speaker was terminally ill. He couldn't speak at all. And he used his laptop to speak. So you couldn't tell it wasn't him. Very powerful. So that technology is there today from a technology standpoint. So I think we're right on the cusp of a massive revolution here.
Thank you, James. And over to you, Anant. Is that something that you would like to touch on also?
Yeah, maybe I think it's a lot of resonance in terms of what the opportunity is. But I might want to come from the perspective of the industry. Why do this? What's the outcome? What's the value to do this? I'm sure it's a great buzzword, and folks in technology can get very excited to take the next level of innovation. It's a lot about increasing the throughput and productivity of our energy assets. The world needs a lot more energy, and therefore the more you can do with what you have, it's better. Safety is very, very important. I think the one thing that is not recognized more deeply, and it gets a lot lost in the debate, is why do it? I think it's also skills shortages, why you need it. So it's not AI replacing humans, but AI truly augmenting humans. Every energy asset at times needs people with experiences of more than a couple of decades before you allow them to be on extremely critical assets. Today, with the support of AI, you can have an operator with 2 years of experience operate with one which seems like 20 years of experience, and therefore creating that capability to bring a lot more people into the workflow. And finally, I think it aids innovation. Because with the energy transition, a lot of new opportunities are opening up. and the use of AI can accelerate the different pathways that you can look at for the energy transition. And both the existing energy assets and the new ones that are coming through, you can find the right blends to do that. So there are many different outcomes that you could work with, and therefore it's a very natural next step to what we're doing.
I'm really glad you've ended on that sentiment there, Anant, because the next thing I wanted to ask, obviously we've started on the broad subject of AI, but I wanted to ask the panel, to any of you, about clean energy specifically. I didn't know if there were any kind of ways we could measure how far we've come so far. Obviously, we're going to always be optimistically looking ahead. It's a very fast-moving industry. Again, I don't need to tell yourselves or the audience that. But is there anything you can say in how far we've come with AI, specifically when it comes to the push for clean energy?
Maybe if I just clean energy is the next buzzword with
a lot of
AI.
buzzwords here today.
So you can use the clean energy buzzword in many different ways. If I demystify it a little bit, it's definitely about the green electron, which is a lot of the renewables that you can work with. It's also about the green molecule, but it's also about energy efficiency, and therefore how you apply the technology, the AI, into all of those three areas, it's very, very different. If I take the last one, which is the least talked about, which is energy efficiency, I think there's a lot of application of using data that exists and working with it to have a better outcome again of the energy applications that you have today. So it'll be a bit of a counterintuitive way to start on AI and clean energy, but I would say start with energy efficiency. If you can save what we are wasting today, I think there's a lot more application.
Saravan, James?
I think more than the clean energy part, as Anant was rightly talking about, it's energy for AI and AI for energy. So going forward, you will see this going forward in 2 years from now. Energy and AI are two things which can't be inseparable for various reasons. For AI, you need energy, and obviously you cannot go with the traditional energy, and that's where you go back to renewable energy for that. At the same time, as Anant was pointing about, for energy efficiency, there is no other technology than AI that can bring in terms of accelerating gains than the traditional technology. So, because we always believe in AIQ and ADNOC, we always say it's also not a notion, it's a program for us every day. It's energy for AI and AI for energy.
So I agree. I think 2024 is when AI woke up to energy, definitely. And it's a hot topic in terms of how much energy AI uses, but I think you have to be very careful of the forecasts of usage. And that's, for me, exemplified by the huge range. By 2030, some people are saying it's 35% increase from AI. Some people are saying it's 250%. There's a massive range there. And I think most of it at the moment, the data center load will end up being built in the US for the next to 2030, probably about 45 gigawatts, something of that sort of order. But I think you also have to keep a close eye on efficiency, the point you were making. There's been huge advances. You know, the latest NVIDIA processors claim a 25% reduction in energy. There's, you know, Kumi's law as well, which is, I think over the last 10 years, the efficiency of compute has doubled, i.e. got better every 18 months. So it's difficult to predict all of that and how there's so much innovation and efficiency at the moment and how that's all happening. And the final point I'd make is even if you get to 4% of global energy from AI, which I don't believe, there's also the other 96%, which AI will have a massive impact in reducing that energy, you know, reducing energy demand. So I think you have to put all of that together in that whole demand for energy question.
Thank you, James. That's a lovely segue, actually, into the next point I'd like to address with the three of you, especially across your broad spectrum of experience, because it's no secret that AI is a double-edged sword. It is energy efficient, as we mentioned, but also it's very power hungry. So I wanted to maybe, without being too pessimistic too early on in our panel, if you wouldn't mind maybe going through some of the challenges that are apparent when it comes to AI and applying it specifically in the energy space. And hopefully then we can move on to some of the solutions that can come about thereafter. The floor is yours, gentlemen.
Maybe if you talk about more broadly the risks and the challenges, definitely there's an energy challenge, and I'll have my other panelists talk about it. The one challenge that I think all of us recognize, but again, don't understand too much in the context of the operating assets that we are talking about in the energy industry, is cyber. Because a lot of the IT part of the design of technology infrastructure is very well covered by cyber. But OT, the operations technology, is very different. Today, there's a lot of challenge in going and connecting all of the operating assets, because at the end of the day, you need to capture that data which is right now in islands inside the operating assets. As soon as you start connecting it, you are definitely opening the door one way to get the data, but you're also opening the door the other way to get a lot of the cyber risks into that operating asset. And these operating assets are not just high value, but they're also potentially high damage. And therefore, you got to think through the cyber risks right at the outset as you design AI. There's a lot of opportunity, but there's a lot of potential downside of cyber assets. And that, I think, is very important as you start connecting a lot of the operating energy assets as you go along.
Yeah, so I agree with those risks, certainly some cyber risks. I would also point to frameworks. So there's not really a decent governance framework yet around AI. Hopefully, I haven't heard the latest from the Paris discussions, but some of that no doubt is being discussed there. And related to that, the legal implications of decisions made by AI are not really fully understood yet. I think there's more work needs to be done on, what happens if the AI makes a mistake, who's responsible. That hasn't been properly bedded out yet, I think, as a challenge. And the final piece is there's still a lot of talk in the media about the accuracy of AI. That's not my experience, so that's maybe a training issue. Maybe it's to do with how you use the models exactly. But there is definitely a perception of accuracy that needs to be addressed quite quickly as we go through.
Thank you, James. Saravan?
I think adding to what Anant and James were talking about, if you broadly see, one is obviously you started out with energy, and then Anant talked about cyber, and James talking about regulations piece as well and accuracy piece. There is also another piece, which is to do AI, you need to have data to start with, right? People say they just need data, but it's not true. You need annotated data. So what is annotated data? Data with a context. So you cannot have the data without the context. And to have the data with context, again, you need the subject matter experts, the same geologists, the same petrophysicists who may be in the room here. So to get the AI right, you need all these 4 components. And obviously, there are some solutions as well, which we can talk about. I think the first thing that I always say for these challenges piece is, especially for the energy needs, is don't do AI for the sake of doing AI. I think that's the #1 principle to start with. And then the second thing is use technology. Rather than using all the large language models, try to have the small models which can actually take much less power hungry to start with. So,
if I may just build on something that Saravan said, I think very rightly said about the need for annotated data. But how much do users of AI know what other data is really being used to guide actions that you're being driven? And maybe many of you have taken flights to come to IEW, and if you were told just before boarding the flight, hey, the pilot is not on this flight, and this is being flown by AI, I'm sure a lot of you would have still taken that flight, but many would have said, I may give it a pass and not take that flight right now. There is that significant importance in critical assets like aircrafts, which again, something that we look at is what kind of AI support you're creating there. What's the nature of AI that you're bringing in? And when we say AI, it's an implicit assumption you're talking about generative AI, which is exactly the example of, hey, listen, my voice can be replicated, my video can be replicated. That is a bit of probability-based sort of data that you're bringing in, and it can be 95% accurate, and you won't feel the difference in somebody's voice or video. But I don't think you'll work with even 99% accuracy to be comfortable taking that flight. Same is the case with energy assets. You don't let somebody onto an energy asset saying it might be 99% right in taking this action. You've got to be absolutely sure, deterministic in terms of what you're getting as an outcome from that AI model. So going back to Saravan's point about annotated data, I think deterministic AI is a very critical aspect in the context of energy, of operating assets. And that's a risk we have because people don't understand the difference between generative AI, which may be probability based on a lot of different kinds of data, while the deterministic AI will be a lot based on the data that you trust, which is all the use cases that have happened that for that particular operating energy asset. And therefore, making sure that that's the data and those are the use cases you're working with.
Thank you very much. If I can maybe throw to Saravan first, and then Anant, I know you've touched on it a little bit there, but I wanted to maybe talk about some of the challenges of adoption. Saravan, you mentioned about the amount of data, and I know we said the word data a lot there. Anant, you talked about deterministic AI a little bit, so I'm hoping to come back to you. But would you maybe want to talk through a little bit about kind of, barriers to adoption? So when it comes to maybe data sets, as you mentioned, or the right application of AI, or the right AI in the first place, because it is a very broad umbrella term.
So I'll always say 3 challenges to start with. The first challenge obviously is data. I think Anant rightly covered on that. The 2 other challenges that I'll talk about on the first one is user adoption pace. People are getting used to workflows in a certain way, especially in energy industry. It's not new. It's been there for the last 70 years. People are used to work in a certain way and they believe certain data points. I will give you 2 specific examples to start with. We have implemented one of the state-of-the-art computer vision models to give the safety alerts for the people who are actually working on the rigs, right? Whether they're wearing the proper PPE gear or not, whether there are incidents, slip and fall happening or not situations. We implement the same technology on a piece of vessel that carries people to offshore rigs. Whenever the captain wants to go fishing, he wants to switch off the vessels because that's the behavior, right? You can put a system in place, but if you don't put a playbook for AI to be integrated into operations, you can never get the user adoption right. So implementing AI for the sake of AI is not right. You need to get it integrated into operations, which means that you need to know the playbook right on the business process side. That's a challenge, especially in this industry. The third challenge that I always see is the awareness piece. I mean, although there is a lot of buzzwords, ChatGPTs, OpenAI is going around, but when I say awareness not only from the user side, but awareness also from the procurement side. When any procurement guy in any big NOC or IOC try to procure AI system, they want to compare it against a software system. The biggest difference is an AI system on day one, as Anant was pointing out, might have a 95% accuracy. But as you go around with reinforced learning, it reaches the accuracy where you want. So it's not right to compare it against a software system, which is a rule-based system, which exactly behaves the same way on day 1 and day 100, compared to AI system, which is completely different from day 1 and day 100. So these 3 are the challenges I would summarize: data, user behavior, and the awareness within the procurement environment.
Just to build on the user behavior, I completely agree with that. We've got an example where we were looking at leakage in pipes, and we could, by putting machine learning, not generative AI, on existing data, on existing SCADA data, we could go from a situation where the leak was spotted 18 days after the incident happened to actually spotting it on the day with a 98% accuracy. So there was a significant proof point across a number of different examples, but it was the engineers that struggled with that because from their perspective, they'd been used to seeing leakage, dealing with leakage all their lives. They had this new technology. It took a lot to get them to accept that technology, to get bought into it. So I completely agree. Even though you can prove the value, you have to take the engineers with you because they've been with these pipes for a long, long time. So I completely agree with that example.
Anant, do you have anything you'd like to add?
So I think there was a reference to engineers, and I'm sure there are a lot of engineers in this audience. And I'm one too, so therefore I'm biased a little bit. But if you look at all the rules-based control systems that we have in play in almost all of the operations, there's a very defined set of goodness that we've seen with experience come through in that rules-based order and control systems. I think the opportunity that we have with deterministic AI at this point in time is to start learning and evolving those rules based on the context, which also changes every day in an energy asset. So that is the real opportunity as we go forward. You start with a basic deterministic AI model, and as Saravanan was saying, keep improving, keep learning, and get a little bit out of the constraints of the rules-based design that an engineering team may have done, which may not be fully aware of all the contexts of that operating asset.
Thank you. To shift the conversation a little bit further, obviously, as we've mentioned already, AI and energy, both as separate entities and together, are very, very fast-paced and very fast-moving and ever-evolving. Have you experienced any issues with legacy technology or where that applies in the energy industry? And are there any ways in which you've maybe overcome that? I know, Saravan, you're talking from an ADNOC perspective a little bit here. Are there any ways in which you've made sure that the technology that is being implemented is up to speed and works now and in future?
I think that's a good question to start with, right? So if you see specific to AI journey, I always say this to people, AI goes through 3 phases: innovation, scale up, and productize. So innovation is all about coming up a right use case, putting deterministic AI model, as Anant was talking about, and making sure there is a value when it comes to ROI. That's only innovation, right? But many people do this and they claim that AI works for them. So we at AIQ, we started this journey 4 years back. We have gone through this innovation in 2023. So, and we have learned, right, as we go around. So we have this famous notion with us, which we call it as fail fast, fail cheap. So if anything that doesn't work, guys, understand it doesn't work and move on, try to do something new. Scaling up is a phase which is very important in AI life cycle. So what we have learned over there was you can get a 99% accuracy with 2 data sets, but the moment you try to, let's say, connect to 3,000 wells of production data, the accuracy drops to 2%. And the only way to improve it is do annotations. Do annotations again and again and again. Bring the right context. That's where it increases the accuracy. Many people are still going through that, and we have done that. There's tons of learning on there. That's one big thing I will tell everyone who starts with AI to start with. The second thing I always say is, as Anant was talking about, the cyber challenges of implementing AI in OT. Implementing an AI in IT is everyone are doing this. It's in your control. How to implement AI in OT? So we have done this with having a DMZ layer, I mean, actually in partnership with Honeywell, one of the Honeywell APC controller. But still, IT is a big no-no integration into OT in any of the offshore critical assets. So we are actually working on a program to demystify that. So we call it as AI at the edge. So we are actually building an AI box at the edge so that it doesn't need to connect to OT in the IT environment. The third thing, obviously, is the biggest challenge that we have seen is actually on the adoption side of integration AI with the business processes. That's something I always tell for anyone who does AI in this industry is the only way to do that is not only educating the people on the business processes, but also productizing AI. So what does productizing AI? The end user at the end of the day who has been used to rule-based system wants an interface that is easy to use, wants a system that has a very good accuracy, and if it is better, want a system that can run autonomously at its best. If you can put these 3 principles in your application usage guidelines, definitely the improvement will increase. So these are the 3 things very specifically that we have done.
Yeah, so I agree on the OT challenge in terms of how you integrate with OT. Just to give an example, so at Capgemini, what we've done in India, so we've got 170,000 employees in India in various centres. And what we did is we implemented AI on our building control systems, so in the OT systems for the building control systems. And that took a bit of understanding, a bit of working through, but we've managed to reduce our energy consumption on a 2019 baseline by 30%. Just by automating the response to building environments. And that has been a really good example for our customers to come and see and show the art of the possible within the OT environments. Because I agree, there's a lot of nervousness in the legacy OT environments, how you connect into that, how you make it work. And we've got a significant number of sensors where that is now working. So yeah, completely agree on the OT side.
Maybe I'll dial it back to something very basic, which is connectivity. A lot of us are very used to getting a lot of data every day, and we generate a lot of data every day through our mobile phones, through our wearables, and we experience AI in a very different way on our day-to-day basis. We feel connection and connectivity is the most basic capability that exists everywhere. In an operating asset in a refinery, it's a very different situation. I think the APC example that Saravan took is a great example because we are a control systems company, and in a classical control systems, you've been sensing data, you've been collecting that data, you've been acting on that data and taking an operating decision in that asset. You've been doing this for decades, and therefore there is a full chain of data connectivity and data processing that has been happening. Now what you're doing different is moving from the rules-based order that was coded into that control system into a learning mechanism, which is AI. So there, I think applying AI is the very logical next step. I'll take you to the other end of a refining asset, which is the pure play technology capability that is inside the asset. It's surprising that most of them are not connected. And the first aspect of it is just finding that connection to draw that data in a way that is logically and cogently usable. So I think just getting that basic connection going in some of the most operating assets is very important. Also, then the data models are very different in different types of assets. We bought a company called Compressor Controls, and there, if you see the data models that are inside a compressor, are very different. You can't just do it by doing a ChatGPT search and applying it into a compressor. You have to have the core data models of a compressor to understand how a compressor would behave in a specific situation. So if you look at the refining broad asset, within that, the sub-assets that exist are at a very different level of connectivity. How do you draw the data from all of those assets, bring it into a centralized control room, and then start operating that entire refining operation very differently? And to add to the complexity, no two refineries on the planet are the same. So you've got to do this every refinery one at a time.
Thank you very much, Anant. And actually, if I can revert my next question back to you, you mentioned about stripping it back somewhat, and I'd actually like to go back to a previous comment you made about being an engineer yourself and how AI can perhaps give a lot more experience than would be immediately available. I wanted to ask about the skills gap. I think it would be remiss of me if I didn't. It has been an issue in technology and in energy respectively, and again, working together. You could argue that tech issues are people issues. And again, we've talked about how it can progress in some areas, but would you say that there are issues perhaps in making sure this technology can come to fruition as much as it does help in other areas, or is this not an issue in your mind at all?
First of all, I have to say, when you started the question and said, hey, listen, you're an engineer, I did react saying I may have oversold myself and my capabilities.
Nonsense.
But because that was way far back in my life. But just talking through the skills gap, I would actually say it's a skills opportunity.
Nice.
Because today, if you look at the way the energy industry operates, you look for cycles of experience going through in the career of a person, and therefore only at a certain stage in life of that person would you start having that skills, sort of trusted skills capability that you would want in some of your most important assets. I think I said it a little bit earlier, but if I even compare two very different parts of the world, the so-called developed world, where there's been a lot of skills creation over a period of time, but very exciting parts of the world like India, where a lot of new greenfield investment is going in at this point. There is a skills opportunity in both the kinds of skills pools that you have. If you look at, let's say, Europe or even in many other parts of the world where you've had these skills in abundance in the past, today you are getting to a point where every new person, and that's not a large pool of talent, may want to go work on some of the more I would say, more market-facing or more exciting generative AI use cases like video and audio. You don't have somebody waking up today saying, I want to be an AI process engineer or an AI controls engineer. And that's how I'd like to spend 20 years of my life or 30 years of my life. So you have a skills shortage which is starting to appear in those parts of the world, and you still need to operate those assets. So you're using the experience of the existing body of workers and then translating that and supplementing the ones who still are on those assets. In countries like India, you just have demand. You need very experienced people right off the go as you start even doing large solar farms or wind farms, and that is renewables. India will see a revolution in biogas and the power that you can generate, the energy that you can generate with biogas. How do you find the skills in large parts of India, because it will go into tier 2, tier 3, tier 4 towns? You're not going to find that level of skill capability in operating those plants as you go along. That's where I think AI can really step in, because then you can get a large labor pool applied very quickly, because you know they are aided with the AI, and therefore you're automatically getting them a lot of experience, even though they personally may not be experienced.
Thank you, and thank you for addressing it as an opportunity rather than a gap. I think that's a lovely way of putting it. Would either of you like to add anything there, James?
I would certainly add to the opportunity piece. I mean, just Capgemini is obviously a consulting and technology company, and we're having to invest significantly to change how our people think about this. We're investing $2 billion in training people, because just from software coding, it's completely changed how you do software coding. It completely changes how you work as a consultant. So you have to get people to understand that their role is changing significantly using AI, and you have to invest hugely in that. And it's the same in the energy industry. You have to invest in that for the future, for people to understand the opportunity for their career going forward, because we're on the cusp of a revolution. So I think skills opportunities are a really good way of expressing it, Anna.
Saravan?
I think just to add to that skills thing, as Anant was pointing about an opportunity, I slightly have another view on this. Whenever I talk about skills of AI, many people in their mind think that it's about building AI and people who know how to build AI. But it's actually in the age of AI, if you see going forward, the relevance is more actually for the subject matter experts and the people who knows the workflows. It's not about people who build AI. So the dichotomy is going forward, you'll have two sets of people that you need to run AI. One obviously who knows the workflows and subject matter expert. And this can come from the developed countries, as Anant was talking about. But there is another piece which is strongly needed also to build and run this system. This is completely new for everyone, guys, because this came as a sudden knee-jerk reaction for everything that's happening around. So right from universities to system integration companies, to even the analysis sciences themselves, they are figuring out how to do this, right? So, but you will see these two kind of skill training opportunities that will go. And what I will recommend this audience is, instead of trying to resist, follow either one of these block that you believe in, that you believe that your career aspirations are aligned, and then get trained in themselves.
Fantastic. And I feel like we're getting to the more optimistic part of the panel, which is good news for everyone in the room. It's nice to hear that obviously there is a lot of things that have been overcome to help with the progression of AI, and both helping with technology as well as the energy industry. I'd like to kind of put it to the panel to ask about if there's any emerging technology that you've come across or you'd like to shine a light on today that have overcome any of the barriers that have been mentioned so far in today's panel, because we're here talking today at India Energy Week. We've got panelists from all over the world representing a lot of different global regions here. There's going to be impact that it differs no matter what geography. So yeah, if we wouldn't mind kind of asking our panelists about emerging technology and how that is helping overcome some of the barriers to get us to this point, and again, as we continue to look forward.
We've got a technologist on the panel.
I'll ask the esteemed gentleman on the end, please.
So, it's too hard to comment on that because it's changing so far. I mean, in the last week, you had all the announcements of Stargate, and then you had DeepSeek announced, obviously strategically at the same time. It's moving so fast. There's questions about DeepSeek and how there's questions about how effective it is, but the initial analysis seems very effective across the 4 use cases. So I don't think you can make any predictions on that. I think it goes back to a comment you made earlier, which is you have to keep focused on the outcomes here, and you need to keep focused on what you're trying to drive from an outcomes perspective. And that, from my perspective, is still moving very fast at the moment. Just a small example we can give in the EV business, where we worked with an EV retailer in Holland, Eneco, in their EV business. We put generative AI in their call center. It reduced their effort in the call center by 50%, but with an increase in the next promoter score at the same time. That released all those people to go and do energy transition work. So there's, you have to focus on the outcomes we're delivering, and stay connected to the fast-moving tech underneath it.
And Sarah, if I'm going over to you as CTO, do you want to weigh in here?
Yeah, it's an exciting question. People ask me, Arun, what's coming next and what you are seeing, right? So, but I can tell you one thing to start with. AI is not new. It's there from 1970s. It has taken different shapes and sizes, right? But what we have seen in the last 3 years is the acceleration that we have never seen before in the previous decade, to start with. So we all know the simple machine learning models of predicting time series forecasting based on the data sets. And then we have seen state-of-the-art computer vision models. And then we have seen a very specific generative AI. But AI is not just these three. What we will see going forward, which I believe is not a trend, is a reality, which I think will stay at least for another decade, if not another disruption happens, is agentic AI. We believe that agentic AI is completely going to be disruptive. Whether we like it or not, it's going to happen. It's already happening in other industries because it's easier to do with. The only problem that we have is in energy, being an industrial AI, it's not easy to implement agentic AI because it needs, as Anant was pointing about, connectivity, cyber challenges, data context, user adoptions, and all of that. But having said that, people are already started around it. As personal experience, we have done with AIQ for ADNOC, the biggest operating company in Abu Dhabi, and we have seen crazy results last year in the first 3 months of agentic AI. So we believe that agentic AI is coming. So try to get to know about this, learn about it more, and then we see that augmented intelligence is here to stay, but slowly it's also moving to autonomous operations.
Just to come back on the agentic AI, I completely agree. And for people in the room that maybe have not heard this term agentic AI, basically what it is previously AI was used for an individual process. This is about orchestrating numbers of processes together, and it's fast moving at the moment. Just an example in the technology sector we have at the moment, where we do a cloud migration. If you take a 10 gigabyte database for migration, it used to take 30 days, now it takes 5 days, because agents do the initial analysis, they do the scripting, they do the testing, they do the deployment, and all of that is orchestrated by agents. So that's agentic AI, that's an example. Massive impact. So that will also translate to all the industries as well. We see other examples in customer service, and I'm sure it will be fast moving in the energy industry as well. So I completely agree. We're on a revolution on agentic AI.
Maybe if I may take a slightly more sort of around the bend view of what's coming, I would say the whole era of quantum computing is right around the corner. And just for everybody to appreciate what's happening today, you talk a lot about the CPUs, and now it's the GPUs that you're really talking through in terms of the supply chains on the planet. But quantum computing is making very, very fast progress. It is said that when that quantum computer, which is really hardware innovation, gets to that 100 qubits speed in terms of capability, that's when you'll be able to do computing tasks that you cannot do in today's world with the GPUs today. And we do have a very strong capability at Honeywell, as we have a subsidiary called Quantinuum, where we're at the cutting edge of that hardware research. And we see that era coming in as early as maybe 26 or 27, where the real quantum computing would be a reality. And where does that impact us on a day-to-day basis? I think it's molecule discovery, it's drug discovery, where you will start seeing a lot of impact of that quantum computing, and therefore it affects the energy industry very deeply. As you start thinking about, as I said, the green molecule going forward, the quantum computing will have a very significant impact as we go ahead.
Thank you. I'm conscious that we're running out of time, but I'd like to ask one final question, because I do have that power as moderator. I'd like to kind of ask, continuing with this futuristic outlook, if any of my esteemed panelists would like to perhaps give their perspective on how they see AI and the synergy between AI and energy changing in the next 5-10 years, even further ahead, if you have that magic ball that you can look into. Are there any perspectives you'd like to put forward as to how AI is going to continue working, especially as we're pushing this clean transition?
So can I just give one example, because we're out of time. So Mark Benioff, the CEO of Salesforce, has said recently that this group of CEOs will be the last group of CEOs solely in charge of people, because you'll have agentics AI going forward. So I think that's the characterization of how the world is going to change massively in the next 5 years.
Probably one message I would talk about is, even though there is an agentic AI and completely believe in this, we are not talking about replacing humans at the end of the day. We are talking about augmenting human intelligence. I think that one message I want everyone to carry from here.
And finally, Anant.
So maybe it's a bit of my jet lag speaking through here, but I was in Riyadh and in Dubai yesterday, Riyadh on Monday, and I kind of see a common element of technology, AI, and energy being talked in the same vein, which to me is a very different place to be, because so far AI was in the realm of just the services industries, where you could do a lot more in terms of how you serve the broad consumers in your day-to-day search on the internet and so on, or the applications or the agents that you use for your day-to-day work. But the way the whole energy industry and the AI progresses is becoming a nation-state issue going forward, I think is really fascinating, because it'll become intertwined. It's users of each other as we go ahead.
Well, thank you, the three of you, for joining us today on this panel. It's been great to share your insights with the audience, and I'm sure you'll join me in thanking them for their time. Thank you, everyone.